Hi, Alex, and welcome to Entrepreneurcast. It's such a great pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Alex, before we get going with the business side of things, tell us a little bit about who are you outside of your business and what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Spare time, find me on the tennis court. I was playing tennis last night. I'm based in Southwest London, so I play a fair amount of tennis, and yeah, just try and keep generally fairly fit. Sports science was my background at university, so always had an interest in that. So normally doing something quite active, but I do have this other goal, like life goal, if you like, which is to go to every Olympics, every summer Olympics until I die. So if there's an Olympics on, I'm probably going to be there.
Oh, wow, amazing. Well, with the tennis, that's actually very interesting because my cousin used to play tennis,
Oh
and
yeah,
my best friend back home played tennis, and my mom played a little bit of tennis, but
yeah.
my mom is a master of sports and gymnastics. So, yeah, wow, that's amazing. So, Alex, let's go into your business. What is it that you do, and what inspired you to start it?
Good question. I totally fell into the business that I run now. So I'm a speaker coach. I help people who have got a speech to deliver that's going to be seen by lots and lots of people, either live or online. Help them write their speeches, help them get the speeches, and help them deliver them.
Wow, and I also know that on top of that, you also been running TEDx,
hmm
which is huge because that's like events industry. So you, on top of being the speaker and and a coach and all that, you also run your own events, which is pretty amazing. So, with the speaking side, when you coach people, what is your angle on speaking? Because I know a lot of trainers in speaking industry.
Mm.
Are you more of a, motivational coach, or kind of with a twist on being funny, or what is it, that you coach people mainly on?
Sure. I think you're right. There are loads of there are loads of speaker coaches out there. Too many. I think for me, I've sort of ended up in this role having been really frustrated with what I see up on stage when I attend conferences. I think most of the speakers are really forgettable. They're up there to stroke their own ego more than give the audience something that's valuable and they're going to cling on to and remember and able to use in some way. So I guess my angle is I work with people to create quality content. A lot of people ask me whether my background's in drama, and I used to love the stage when I was younger. I didn't. I hated it. I was that guy who would sit at the back of the class. The thought of having to put my hand up in school when I was in a big room full of people, I didn't particularly enjoy that. Having to stand up in front of school kids to chat, or my course mates, classmates to chat, the whole thing used to terrify me. I didn't like any of that stuff. So really, I do help people with delivery, but I spend way more time working on what it is that they're actually saying than how they deliver it. Because if the people who are delivering the talks know that what they're saying is good, they are already going to deliver it with way more confidence than they would do otherwise. So I guess that's kind of my angle.
And would you say you mainly do your talks around just the facts and figures sort of thing to teach people, so more like a trainer, or is it more of like getting more into motivational speech and trying to inspire them and kind of tell them, hey, go and do it, you can do
Mm.
it.
Uh, yeah, so I mean, I've got some quite strong opinions on motivational speakers. I'll tell you about those in a sec. I had a really interesting chat with my mentor a few weeks ago. She's in HR, and she works at the very top end of people development for a really really big bank. And we were sort of talking, and I was talking about, the people that I work with. They're speaking for a reason. They're looking to start a movement, or build a movement, or change behavior. There's a real legacy behind the talk that they're delivering. And she was just like, I don't see speaking like that. I see speaking as someone getting up on stage, talking about themselves, sitting back down. And anybody who's ever worked with me knows that the thought of me having to listen to someone speak about themselves for 20 minutes fills me with dread. Personally, I switch off quite quickly to it, but only because 95% of the population haven't got something that exceptional to talk about. And I put myself completely in that category. I'm not a particularly interesting guy. And if I go up on stage, I will spend very, very little time talking about myself because I want to give people more than that. There are, on occasions, I do work, and that doesn't mean that I don't work with people who just talk about themselves. I think there, on occasion, you end up, you meet somebody and you just think your story is so mind blowing. You can just say what you want on stage. Like you've got something that is exceptional. And I'm talking about, I've never heard it before or whatever. But I find a lot of the people that speak on stage, I can predict what's going to happen as soon as they've started their talk. It's like, right, so there's going to be a problem in a minute, and then you're going to overcome that problem, and you've had this aha moment, and now you're going to tell everybody that they can do that aha moment. That's basically what a motivational speaker typically does, or most of the motivational speakers that I've come across. So I find that quite frustrating. If I know where a speech is going to go within a couple of minutes, I'm going to switch off. I'm going to play on my phone or pretend I'm tweeting when I'm really not. I'm just dealing with my emails or whatever. I'm definitely this super skeptical asshole speaker coach that really tries to. I try and work with people to choose the right story or anecdote to talk about in their talk that people can learn something from, but it should take no longer than 90 seconds to deliver that. And then the art of that is what you say to make it interesting, and when you choose to say it within your speech to capture imagination. That's where it starts to get really kind of interesting. From a motivational speaker's point of view, I know I'm starting to rant now, but you didn't expect this when you asked the question. So from a motivational speaking point of view, I kind of think that motivational speaking is like a paradox. I think that, if the number as a TEDx organizer, I have people pitching me almost every single day saying, I'd love to speak at your event. The exposure it can give people is pretty phenomenal if you do a good enough talk. And what the most common speech pitch I get is, I've learned some really important lessons over the last few years with my story. And I think if I share my story, I'm going to help loads of other people. And it's going to really motivate them. It's going to really inspire them. But here's the thing. If you set out to motivate somebody at the beginning of your speech, it's like a trigger, and a typical audience will put up a wall. It's like if I said to you, I'm going to tell you something really funny and you're going to laugh. And then I try and tell you the joke. You're already thinking in your own head. You're like, actually, I'm going to see if I can prove a point by not laughing. Like it just can kind of create this barrier. But then on the other side of things, I think that audiences, I think they mistake the feeling of feeling motivated and the feeling of feeling inspired for learning something new or seeing something in a way they've never seen it before, which has opened up this whole new world, which is why you can leave a talk feeling, wow, that was absolutely amazing. I feel like I can conquer the world. But it's really because you've learned something new. And as adults, we don't really learn that much anymore, right? When it's much harder to inspire and motivate a child because they go to school every day. They're learning stuff every single day. So they remember what that feels like. But when we learn something new and it kind of blows our mind a little bit, we definitely appreciate it a lot more. So that feeling of inspiration and motivation that people need to get, really that's got to come through quality content. It's not got to come through your amazing story that has just been awesome where you've overcome a hurdle.
And how would you say you choose your speakers? Because as you said, people pitch to you every day. So how do you actually go about, and how do you figure out, like, is their story worth sharing, or do you ask them to send you the kind of like the example of the speech or either a video or whatever, or do you kind of like look at your personal relationship with them and see if they're personable enough? How do you choose your speakers for your events?
You know what? So one of the best ever speaker pitches I got was from a friend of a friend. And when I have friends saying, "Oh, I know someone who should speak at your event," and all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh, here we go again." I was like, "Have a chat with her." And it was my very first event at the time. So I was like, "Yeah, I'll have a chat with her." I knew nothing about her. Called her up, super inexperienced, all this stuff. And she was like, "Yeah, I'd love to speak at your event, Alex." And I was like, "Why is that?" And she goes, "Well, I want to change the perception of sexual assault." And that was all she said. Stopped right there. And I was like, boom. Yeah, you can come and speak. I didn't know anything about how credible she was to talk about the subject. I didn't know what she was going to say and how she was going to argue her case. But I did know that I wanted to be part of that journey.
Mm.
Um, and you know, I think the biggest appeal for an organizer of any kind of event that gives people the opportunity to have the spotlight on them and share something that's of value is if you can be part of something that's much bigger than the speaker itself, and you can help that speaker create that movement and so forth. It makes a huge difference. And you know what? 2 weeks ago, this same girl, her name's Isabel Chapman, she gave me a call completely out of the blue saying, we've done it. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, the Tory government have like released some legislation that is changing the way sexual assault is being like dealt with and stuff. And I was just
Well,
like, well, holy shit, it really works. I'm sorry, I don't know whether I'm allowed to
amazing.
swear on this, but so that for me was really interesting. And then and you know, makes me feel pretty good because I'm part of something bigger. We had another lady called Edwina Thompson come and speak. She's a threat finance expert, so she kind of looks at how the likes of ISIS, Al Qaeda, and so forth get their money. And she wanted to speak and use the talk as a precursor to meetings that she had with the UN, the US government, European governments, NATO. And you just think, you know what, if I can play a part in making something big like that happen, I am 100% in. So actually, it's really, really easy to pitch an organizer if you don't make it about you and you make it about a bigger cause.
Mm.
That's my personal take. I'm sure other organizers will feel differently to that, but for me, that's kind of what I like.
This is really interesting that you just said that because I actually mentioned to you earlier before our call that I was interviewing this other lady yesterday. And during our conversation, she asked me, what is my kind of goal or vision? And I went into something that I never share with people, my end goal.
Mm.
And then she said, no, you can't wait for 5, 10 years. You have to start now. You have to make people aware of your vision now, because if that is what is behind everything you do, you have to share it. And I was like, okay. So it's really interesting to hear it from you as well, because that kind of even gives me that idea that wow, I have to start sharing my vision with other people and with the world. So
You
thank you for
totally
that.
do. And you've got a book coming out, right?
Oh yeah, that's well, I'll be one of the authors. That's only one of the things, but my whole thing, which I can share with you after, but it's about the charity that I want to build.
Okay.
So yeah, but anyways, today is not about me, it's about you. So so Alex, throughout our entrepreneurial and business journey, we come across a lot of challenges. What would you say was your greatest challenge, and how did you manage to overcome it?
You know what? That's a really difficult question, and it's you know, I guess it's I don't. So I started off in door-to-door sales, so I can give challenges. I can tell you what I learned from that experience. You know, I've knocked on maybe 10,000 doors, and I'd say that of those 10,000, maybe maybe 300 of those people said yes. The rest said no. So that's 9,700 rejections straight into the face. Boom. I mean, that definitely gives you some resilience. And I think that if you can learn to be okay with getting a no, it doesn't feel very nice to start with, but if you can learn to be okay with that, it's really, really important. Ted, you know, a story that I don't tell too often. I So the reason I found out about TED was I got asked to speak at a TEDx event years and years ago, and the event ended up getting cancelled last minute. And I was like, how on earth has that happened?
Hmm.
And I looked into, you know, applying for a TED license. So I applied for a TED license. Within 24 hours, they'd said nope. Literally straight back, not interested, not accept your application.
Wow.
So I just kept applying again and again and again. It took me 18 months for them to say yes. And
Wow.
you know, I do think that it's if you can learn to take it on the chin and come back fighting, I think it's all part of the process. And I look back on that experience now. I would never have run such a good event, or I say my team ran the event. I just worked with the speakers. I didn't do any of that. But the events we've run have been great, and that would never have happened had I not had to go through this process of them just throwing it back in my face, and me having to go deeper and into understanding how the conference worked and the mechanics of it all.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's one. Definitely, as a general business challenge, I think taking the plunge to running my own business was a big jump. I've been putting it off for a few years, and then I ended up in a situation where I didn't give myself a choice but to do it and but to survive. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, taking the jump to start with is I don't know. I mean, what's your audience here? Do most of them run their own businesses, or are they looking
Yeah,
to
there'll be
one day?
entrepreneurs and business owners.
Sure. Okay. So my I think my philosophy is you should say yes to things that you don't know how to do. And there's a Richard Branson quote that signifies that absolutely perfectly, much better than I could. But I always put myself. So I'm running an event in New York. I know nobody out in New York. I'm running an event out there in like 5 weeks' time. I have
Wow.
no idea whether anyone's going to turn up. Right now, I've sold one ticket. I'll just put it out there. But it doesn't matter. Like if I'm going to fail and that event doesn't work, then I failed pretty fast and I've learned something quickly. If I
Hmm.
succeed, the rewards from succeeding and putting myself out there will far outweigh the humiliation of a few people not turning up to an event that is thousands of miles away from where I live. Right. So I don't know. I try and put myself in a few situations where I have no idea whether it's going to go well or not, and see what happens.
I love it. Well, Alex, we obviously talked about the challenges, but what would you say was your greatest success in
Ooh,
your business mainly? Business and life, yeah.
greatest success. I think I'm never very good at celebrating successes that happen. I'm very much I beat myself up a little bit, and that gets me working and so forth. So I never dwell too much on the success, personally, because I'm worried that it means I'll relax and I'll stop and I'll get sloppy and I'll get lazy. You know what? I think my definition of success is having not had to knock on my parents' door and say I need to come home and live at home, or can I borrow some money? I've not had to do any of that. It's been completely off my own back. Hopefully, I will never have to do that. But for me, that's I think the first factor of success for me is that I'm doing it myself and not having to ask. I'm not very good at asking for help, but not having to either, particularly for my parents who've already given me enough.
Just for fun, really. Where do you come up with your best ideas?
Oh,
Everywhere.
after a workout, when I'm not thinking about work, um, when I'm on holiday, in the shower, at the point where you've just switched off from something. After I've had a few drinks with some mates and I'm walking home or whatever, you know what? It's all the best ideas tend to come completely randomly. Had an idea a little bit earlier. It was just over breakfast, like you know. How about
Awesome.
you? Where do yours come from?
Usually during the workout, very often, like during the workout, I have to stop and to write things down.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it really depends. For me, I get inspired a lot by people I interview, and then sometimes ideas just start coming into my mind. And when I brainstorm with other people as well,
Mm.
then as well. So there is this synergy, and I started getting a lot of stuff going in my head. So yeah, but a lot of people that I've interviewed would say in the shower, during a walk, on the planes,
Yeah.
on the road, like when they're driving. So yeah, it's very interesting to see a lot of similar answers. So Alex, throughout our journey, we get inspired by a lot of people. Do you have any personal heroes or who inspires you?
Yes. Yes, I do. um, Jamie Oliver. I've always been a massive fan of Jamie Oliver. I could rant about Jamie Oliver for hours and hours and hours. I remember watching him on his TV show, The Naked Chef, when he kind of just came out. He wasn't particularly well known, but he had this food show, seemed to do pretty well for himself. How he has built an empire and the way he's gone about building that empire and changing the way people feel about food and the way people respond to food, interact with it, making people healthier, even though he doesn't look like he eats that much healthy food himself. So I'm going to question him on the how much healthy food he eats. But what I will say is, you know, to see someone take a TV show and create a much bigger purpose about it. If I could kind of emulate any like career and journey, I mean, his would definitely be up there, because he put some real depth and meaning behind food, and he's trying to create a real legacy with what he does. So I think Jamie, yeah.
Awesome. Alex, you've been running your own business. You're doing pretty well for yourself. You take every challenge and you break it and you overcome it. You know, you got your license for TED. But what is next for you? What's your next big dream, goal, aim? And if there was somebody who's listening today who could help you get there, who would it be?
That's an interesting question. So I think I advise a few people on sort of setting up businesses and things. And one of the things that I always say is stick to what you know. A lot of people have these business ideas that have nothing to do with any of their experience before, and they just want to go in and try and start that. And I actually think that you're kind of way more destined. It sounds more exciting and I guess more romantic. It's like, oh, I just decided to do this one day and I did it. I had no experience and I just went and did it. I mean, that is very, very rare that actually happens. You look at all the people who run unicorn startups, so to speak, these, you know, elusive unicorns. You look at the people who are actually behind all of those and their experiences prior to that. Take Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook. I know it's a really obvious example. He didn't just like come up with Facebook like that. He stole it from somebody else, or a pair of rowing twins from Harvard. But if you look at his background, it was all in coding. He understood. He was from Harvard. This guy was stupidly intelligent, and he he just took what he knew, brought other people in who knew how to code and grow things, and then it started to sort of take off from there. So I think the next thing that I want to do will probably be related to public speaking and communication in some way. I have written a business plan, and something that I'd like to work on is I think that schools really screw people over when it comes to public speaking. I don't know anyone who enjoyed public speaking when they were at school, and most of the people who have fears and concerns about public speaking, it's often linked to something that's happened to them at childhood. You know, when you're 12 years old, at one of the most vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable periods of your life, and you're asked to stand in front of your classmates who are like hyenas, a pack of hyenas ready to pounce and take the mickey out of you and whatever, it's obviously going to be quite a terrifying experience. So the short answer is that I'd love to create something that changed the way young people felt about public speaking so that they could at least tolerate it if they couldn't enjoy it. And I think the key to doing that, and I'll give the answer out right now, I think it's really, really simple, is get young people speaking in front of people who are younger than them. And the reason why I think that works is because for young people, age is a natural high social status. Like that's why kids say, oh, I'm 11 and a half, or like I'm 12 and three quarter, or whatever, right? If you get a 12-year-old speaking in front of 20 10-year-olds, they'll find it much less scary than speaking in front of 20 12-year-olds, because they're not among their peers anymore, and that 2 extra years gives them a status of authority, which means they'll deliver with confidence. So if that was their start to public speaking, I think there'd be more people who'd be capable of doing that. And I think the longer term benefit of that is I spend a lot of my time trying to convince people who don't want to get on stage because they've got amazing ideas and they've got value to share on stage. And a lot of those people who've got the real value, they don't want to get up on stage and share it. And I think that longer term, that might get some of those really highly intellectual people who perhaps struggle to communicate the ideas that they want to communicate. It might just start getting more of those people up on stage and more of the introverts perhaps to speak.
I love your vision. Maybe we should team up once I have my charity
Let's
all
do
up
it.
and running, because I want to develop a program, like personal development program, but also have investment into the kids' future, so to
Mhm.
teach them from very young age. So maybe you could, help with developing the way of them seeing public speaking and all that. That could be a thought.
Well, I spent about 7 years in the charity sector,
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and fundraising, all sales and fundraising, and all of that stuff. And that whole the perception of charities is just a fascinating topic in itself. A
Yeah.
charity is a business. Anyone who thinks a charity isn't a business is just so far off the mark. Charities are businesses, but they give their profits away. And I think that there needs to be a better understanding universally of how charities are run for charities to do better. Because there are all these people like, oh, all the money goes towards admin. It's like, well, if you don't have admin costs, you don't have a charity. It
Mm.
wouldn't exist. People can't afford to live otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a rant for another time. There's a really good TED talk that says it better than I can. If you look up TED charity talk, you'll find the guy. It's very good.
Amazing. Alex, just before we start wrapping up, I just wanted to kind of ask some tips and strategies out of your experience and wisdom in the business that you gained. Could you just share with us like your top three tips and strategies for the listener today to better the business, or to run it better, to be better,
To
etc.
run their business better.
Yeah.
Okay. Get into a routine. I think particularly I'm a one man band business essentially. So for me, routine is really important, and I think it's also a very hard thing to get and to find and to find. I'm still kind of working mine out, I think. But if you can get into a routine, I think that can really help you. If and I'm in fact, you know what? All the advice I'm going to give are for like one man bands like me, because I think I can relate to that. I used to run a slightly larger company with lots of people, but I think this will be of kind of more use, and particularly even the people who run their own kind of they're founders of companies where they have 50, 100 employees or whatever. The same stuff applies to them, because actually I think being an entrepreneur running a business is one of the loneliest things that you can possibly do. I don't
Mm.
think it's talked about enough. And I think that business people spend so much of their time outwardly projecting what they'd like to their business to be like, as though it already is that, when really deep down they see all the cracks and the holes and all of that stuff. And there's this massive
Mm.
disparity. So I think my first one is create a good routine that works for you. I think the second one is have a support network around you that you can talk to and get real with, and not be afraid to drop your cover and tell people how it really is, because
Mm.
otherwise you will drive yourself slowly insane. And my third tip would be, I tell you what, it's all to do with this. Take off social media off your phone. Take emails off your phone. It will transform your life. I haven't quite done the social media yet, but when I've got myself a virtual assistant, that's what I'll be doing. But I have taken my emails off my phone, and the weight that just dropped off my shoulders. It's like, I don't
Mm.
need to reply to emails 24/7. Just apply when you're ready. People can wait. So they're my three.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And did you come across any kind of resources that helped make your life easier, basically?
Facebook. I run my business through Facebook.
Oh, wow.
It,
I
that
love Facebook.
that company is literally taking over the world. I mean, the fact that I don't have to pay Facebook a penny to get clients, like, it's mind blowing. Create a community, get clients, talk about my message and values, all that jazz. It's absolutely mind blowing. The data that those guys have on us, they literally are taking over the world. They know absolutely everything. It's very scary what they know. But you know what? I think as long as you don't do anything bad, you've got nothing to be scared about. So as long as you're not being sneaky and naughty, I think it's fine. Um, So I'd say that's probably the most valuable resource. One thing I do like outside of TED Talks, and a few people probably when you ask that question say, "Oh, TED's a great space for inspiration." Blah 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 blah. Desert Island Discs for me is a wonderful podcast. I don't know whether you've come across it.
Not yet.
So it's one of the if not the oldest serving British radio program. 75 years old. Concept's really simple. They take really interesting people. They're interviewed for half an hour to 40 minutes, and they give the eight songs that they would take with them to a desert island if they were going to be stranded on there. Now, if you want to just get out of your world, just go on there. They've got maybe thousands of episodes, and it's a great way to get out of yourself and be in someone else's life for a little bit. And I argue I personally probably take more inspiration from that than I do TED Talks now. But that could be because I analyze every speech I watch, which kind of ruins the experience.
And also, I come across a lot of people who say that at some point in life, they came across a book that changed their life. Did you have such experience?
Harry Potter.
Seriously?
I don't know whether that's true. I don't know whether I'd say it was life-changing. um, I've read a few of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I've done the reading for all of those. I think I think they are all good books. What I'm starting to read, I read a lot of autobiographies. I like things that are real. I think I follow my dad in that respect. He likes real things. I used to wouldn't mind like fantasy stuff, but now I see something on TV. I'm like, oh, it's got like dragons in it. I'm not interested. But what I'm starting to learn now, having just been stuck in autobiographies and all of that, is that fiction has really got a place in the world, and it's a great escape. So yeah, I don't, but you know what? One thing I would like to do this year, and it's a big goal in my head really, but it's to a lot of other people it'll seem a small one. Read from start to finish a fiction book. That would be quite an achievement for me, because I find it very hard to get out of this world. I don't think I've answered your question there, but
Well, it's great to know, because we all read different books, and obviously maybe you didn't have one that changed your life, but you have your fiction books that can take you out of this world and help you relax. So fair enough. Sounds good to me. Well, Alex, you shared quite a lot with us, and thank you so much for that. We're coming to the end of the show, but before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else you would like to share with us or advise on today?
yeah, okay. So this is for anybody. I'll give one piece of advice, and this is for anybody who's going to get up on stage to speak. The thing that separates the very, very best, the top 1% of speakers from everybody else, is that the very best speakers don't tell you what to think, because they don't need to. They present all of the evidence in a way that allows you to draw your own conclusion, and they're so confident in that argument that they've put together. They don't need to force stuff down your throat, and they don't need to preach. And if I was going to give one piece of advice for people who do speak a lot, and this isn't for something for beginners necessarily, but for people who do speak a lot, it would be, what can you leave the audience to decide for themselves, because it will actually create much more of a connection with the audience. They'll remember your talk much more, and it will actually be a much, much more powerful talk.
Alex, for anyone who would like to get in touch with you, or to follow you, to connect, what's the best way to find you?
Facebook. Facebook, I am Alex Merry, speaker coach, and it's Merry spelt like Christmas.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sparing a few minutes of your time. It's been a great pleasure to have you. Hopefully we can have you back at some point again. And I really look forward to meeting in person.
It's been fun. Thank you so much.